that means we're on.
We're on.
Well, Bradley, thank you for being our now furthest traveled guest on the show.
Yes. Yeah. All the way from South Carolina.
Yes. So how was the drive up?
It was long, but
Yeah.
it was good, and a total of 6 hours between all my stops, and but well worth it. I'm glad to be here and finally settled in. And
Yeah. So do you do a lot of business in North Carolina?
I do. I travel a lot between Charlotte, Raleigh, close to Atlanta. Not quite in Atlanta. I don't market myself there very often, but I've been all the way to Maine and on the East Coast. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is quite a distance.
Oh, it is. Yeah. A 24-hour drive.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you stop or did you drive that all the way through?
For the first 6 times, I did it straight through. And then
Wow.
I stopped. I got really tired in Jersey one night, and I was like, I've got to get a hotel. As soon as I got that hotel, I stopped every time after that because I got spoiled by it.
I can't imagine. I'm from New Jersey originally, so I've made that drive a lot. And I think by the time you get around that area, especially because traffic gets heavier, and I could not imagine having to go essentially the same amount of distance all the way
Twice.
through Maine.
That's right. Yeah. That's awful.
But that's kind of the beautiful thing about photography is I think you do have a lot more flexibility to travel compared to some other vendors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The equipment list is a lot shorter, and the supplies are, we don't have a huge list like the bakers do. Can you
Right.
imagine transporting and doing everything on site? There's no way. They're obviously they ship everything. So I've worked with caterers that ship hundreds and hundreds of miles, even internationally.
Right.
But it's a huge expense to do that.
Yeah. And with camera gear, it's like you just have the cameras, maybe a couple lights, and whatever else you need, I would imagine.
That's it. Yeah, whatever fits in the trunk.
Yeah, so that's not bad.
No.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for being here, Bradley
course.
Shaw Photography. I know that we talked a little bit about your backstory and just kind of how you got to where you are now. You've gone through I think a story that a lot of people can relate to in, being passionate about something and kind of losing that passion and then having it fired back up again. I mean,
Right.
What was that journey like for you?
Devastating.
Yeah.
When I got into photography is because I just loved to go out and do it. I didn't get paid to do it. I just drove around and took pictures of whatever I wanted to, and I enjoyed that. As I explored the wedding industry, and several photographers that I'm colleagues with introduced me to it, I just enjoyed shooting weddings. It wasn't like it really happened organically. And I got into the portrait side of things, started off in a portrait studio, and I learned a lot there, but it was more production focused and it wasn't customer focused. And as time went on, 2 to 3 years into it, I realized, man, I really hate my job, and could not get beyond just booking that next couple just because it was a booking. And it just destroyed my passion for everything that I learned to do. So.
And I think that happens to a lot of people, right? Like you get, whether you're in a rut because it's stressful or if you have personal things going on, there's so many things that can affect the day-to-day to your job. And I've talked about this so many times with different guests that the wedding industry can be challenging, right?
Oh,
like
yeah. You're
dealing with consumers. I've said this so many times, and they're emotional for very obvious reasons, and rightfully so.
That's right.
And stressed out. They're spending a ton of money and they don't know what to expect. And then you as the vendor are the professional in the situation. So I think that, and I know just entrepreneurship in general has that, where you have highs and lows, and the highs are super high and the lows are very low. So I think that's something that a lot of people go through, and
yeah,
getting out of that. Yeah.
Coming into where I really started getting burnt, I realized that I wasn't providing the best service for my clients, and that was the most killer part, because I've went through all of this and prided myself on the service that I provided, and now I couldn't provide it because I wasn't mentally capable. So I wasn't really doing the best job possible, and that's when I kind of just decided I need to take a break. So as time went on, it became, I didn't do photography at all for 2 years.
Wow.
I didn't even pick up my camera until my daughter was born. When my daughter was born, it changed everything. it gave me a reason to document something again, to tell a story again,
Yeah.
and take it to that point where it wasn't about the money. It was just about the story, just about the emotions that I could capture, and it reestablished that passion for me so quickly. It was unreal.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how family can influence you like that. Like having that support from your daughter, who I'm sure was an infant at the time, but just being able to capture those moments for her, kind of sparking that passion, I think it's amazing.
Well, my wife hates pictures. She hates being on the other side of that camera. Mm-hmm. So it gave me an opportunity to capture something that didn't make her feel uncomfortable, and I could kind of just sit in the background and do my thing. And it made it much easier for her to go back and remember the stuff too, and it all started from there, and it just became a snowball effect to where I wanted to take it to the next level, by going back into business.
Mm-hmm. Well, good for you. I mean, reinventing and rebranding and doing all that for a business. I mean, when you take a break like that, that's really what you have to do. You have to rebrand, you have to reestablish yourself, and that takes a lot of work. I mean, I give you so much credit for being able to go back into it and really take on that challenge.
Yeah, and I challenged myself to completely reinvent myself, no longer using even my past work. Mm-hmm. So I had to rebuild from the bottom, and I think that was the motivation. If I can do it from scratch again, I can prove it to myself.
Right.
So
when you're going through and you're trying to go through this rebranding process that I know a lot of businesses are starting to think of, especially with COVID, right? Like there's so much downtime. You're thinking about your business. How do I make sure I'm coming back strong?
Yeah.
What does that process look like for you?
Reaching the customers that I already have is the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. With my business, it's word of mouth, and really any small business, word of mouth is the largest marketing tool. So keeping in touch with those brides and letting them know that I'm there and letting them know that I care is only going to expand that pool.
Yeah.
So, as far as the social media goes, I had to completely teach myself that. And at first it was overwhelming. It was, how can I translate what I can offer and attract the right customer for myself? Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to attract every customer anymore. That's not my goal. So I know what it takes and how many weddings it takes to shoot and be profitable and be successful without overdoing it.
Right.
And, that may cause some vendors that may say, you can't charge the same thing you were charging before. You may have to charge more, you may have to charge less. So it's time freedom is far more important to me now than the money. Mm-hmm. So attracting that client, that's where I had to put everything into social media and just attract the right clients. Now, that means shooting everything I want to. That means I'm open to post anything I want to because it's my business, and I'm not out to impress anybody based upon previous works. Mm-hmm. I'm there to impress them on a personality level because that's what I want. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, that makes sense. And I think that there's a lot of people that they will appreciate that. They want to work with somebody that they have that same personality type with, that they can relate to. And it's not all about price, right? Like if I get a quote from a vendor, and just because it's the lowest price, if I don't like their work or I can't stand their personality, I can't work with them over the next couple months planning this event. And then especially the photographer who's having to capture all these moments at the day of.
Absolutely.
It's like I have to make sure that we have that connection. So I think trying to do it authentically is definitely a challenge. How do I make sure that I'm not only showing my best work and what I can offer to a client, but how do I articulate who I am as a person? And to your point, reaching the clients that I want to work with, because that's important too.
Oh yeah. And it's, it takes being honest with your potential client as well. Mm-hmm. Through consultations, that's the most important part of my job is the consultation, because if we don't click, it's not worth it for them, mm-hmm. and me. So I've been brutally honest sometimes where I've just said, look, I think you guys are headed in the right direction. I may not be the person for the job, but here are the colleagues that I know that would be. Mm-hmm. 10 years ago, I couldn't imagine doing that.
Right.
But it feels good. I don't have to worry about how am I going to pay all of my expenses and put some in the savings account anymore. So it makes it a much easier decision for me to just be honest with that couple, because they don't deserve that either.
Right. Definitely not. And do you think that if a couple were to call you and you didn't meet in person, are you able to figure that out enough over a phone call, or is it really that in-person interaction that you need to figure out if you're going to click and be able to work together?
Until 2 months ago, I didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, very true.
So that's been an adjustment for sure. And I've done several FaceTime consultations. I've done several phone call consultations, and it's extremely tough.
Yeah.
It's extremely tough. And of course, nobody in this industry is cold-hearted by any means. It's not, so with everybody rescheduling, I'm far more open, to accommodating now than I would have been 3 months ago. So but over the phone, it's hard. I've had to invent, more questions or deeper questions to kind of get down to who they are as a couple, what they enjoy doing on the weekends, because that matters to me, and it's because I'm a very candid shooter. Some people just don't flow with that. Some people want that posed. Some people want that extremely structured photo shoot. And most of my couples that I work with, I found don't want that. So I don't want to attract that person. That's not what I'm here to do. So keeping that, it's tough. Just to go back to it, I mean, it's extremely tough to determine who this couple is over the phone.
Yeah.
Because I pick up, body language is everything. So I can pick up in person what's actually, what their mannerisms are, if they're uncomfortable, if they're not uncomfortable with the idea. Everybody in a consultation goes, yeah,
Right.
So, overcoming that. And sometimes, some people say 30-minute consultations, 1 hour consultations, and I don't limit to any time. I just tell people we're here to talk and have a conversation, and that's what we're here to do. So I could have consultations that last an hour and 10 minutes, and then I have some that last 15 minutes. So I try to set aside time for everybody because, like I said, getting to know that person or that couple is the most important thing to me.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, what types of questions do you think that couples should be asking photographers? Because I feel like maybe the reason they have those 15-minute consult is they just don't know what to ask.
Right.
They're just like saying, yeah, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah. And it's on both ends. I think it's 50-50. I think the couples should go in and ask, how many weddings have you done? And you have to, that's the first question I would ask as a couple. How many weddings have you done? Because before, most photographers don't get to price until after everything's done. So they sit there and they sweet talk you and they get you all riled up. And then by the time you're in the consultation, those questions never get asked because the photographer takes control of the conversation.
Right.
But there's not a lot of new wedding photographers out there that aren't, at least in these days, open and honest about it. Most of them are pretty upfront that this is new to me. They're even willing to shoot free weddings. That's a huge thing for new startups. And so I don't think experience is that much of an issue. It always comes down to price and style, because I can create something timeless, classic, that doesn't fade away, that people aren't going to look back and go, oh, why did we do that? That's so stupid, So, that's where the personality match comes in. But as a photographer, I should be disclosing that anyway. I should be driving the conversation for them to ask questions, and that's any good negotiation. That's any good open and upfront conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think couples just need to realize that, like, hey, you're kind of in the power seat here. Like, you're the one booking these vendors, and like, they're the professionals and will walk you through it. But I know the price conversation can be sensitive. Sometimes they don't want to disclose budget because they think they're going to get turned away or something like that. But I think it's important to really make sure that they're asking those important questions.
On the other side of that coin with the budget, a lot of brides don't want to disclose their budget because they don't want people to take advantage of that.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, my budget's $3,000. Oh, okay, well, it's going to be $2,950.
Right.
And it's like, so find a photographer, find a vendor they don't have to list every pricing point that they have. It doesn't have to be a la carte or anything like that, but find a vendor that's at least honest about their pricing and has something to go off of. I never trust anybody. Car dealers, photographers, cake makers, doesn't matter. If they don't post their pricing or they're not readily available to you, I don't trust it. You know? And it's like, as a photographer who's built, of course, we all have to go up on our prices, as things change, or as our equipment list grows and our expenses grow. We pay for insurance on our equipment. A lot of people don't know that. So, those things get expensive. So as equipment list grows, the abilities will grow, and then the cost grows.
Right.
So but always find somebody who's open and honest about their pricing. Even if they're saying, I have several package deals, and I can find one that fits your budget. That's fine, but there's stories of photographers that have really just made a bad name for others, with their pricing models. And, they might charge $1,000 to shoot a wedding, and they're like, wow, that's a great deal. And then they get to the print part of it, and then the prints cost $5,000. The album costs $10,000. So always be very suspicious. It's like going to buy a car. You know what you want. You know the features that you want. But you're relying upon somebody else to be honest with you and disclose all the information, whether that car's been in a wreck, whether that car has a recall.
Right, yeah.
So it's do all that discovery, because that's going to be the biggest thing to benefit these couples out here with such a saturated market, with so many people to choose from. It's those are the discovery questions they need to be asking.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of there's a good and bad in social media, right? The good is that it helps showcase your work like never before. The bad is when I am in these Facebook groups, and I'm not a big Facebook fan and or user, but that's another side podcast rant. But anyway, I'm in these groups and I see these people who are saying they're photographers and they're quoting brides like $300 to shoot their whole wedding. And then I look at their business that they have and I'm like, you're never going to see those photos. Like, no. It's not going to happen.
Nope.
And I don't think that they realize that. And actually, it was only very recently that I realized that actually happened to my parents, where they had a legitimate photographer, but they lost the photos. So they had to go with I think they had a videographer as well, and they were able to get photos from them, but their whole wedding album was lost.
That's awful.
It's terrible. It's this is this huge event and such a big moment for them, and they lost the photos.
Well, right. And that's, again, that's another cost factor, because I'm so meticulous about backing everything that I have up. I have 4 external drives. I've got 2 portable drives I can take anywhere with me at all, and I back up same day, same shoot. And even if in between the ceremony and the reception, as I get done with the photo shoots, and as everybody's going to the reception and getting settled, I'll even stick it in my Lacy drive and let it back up and just put a new card in. So those people charging $300 aren't backing the stuff up, and that's kind of in play with what you were saying. Is there's a reason they're cheaper. It may be they may have great photos, but they're missing something.
Right. And yeah, it's not to say that if a photographer is offering their services cheaply or free, for example, that it won't be great. They could just be new. I think it's just important that they disclose that, and that couples realize if they are new, they might not have the insurances that they need. A lot of venues require that. So you don't want to book this photographer, give them a deposit because you saved a couple $100 and then now you can't even use them.
Yeah.
And I know, the topic of cancellations and all that right now is a big issue because everybody's either canceling or rebooking, and it's you don't want to be in that situation if you don't have to be. So
No. But that's going to open the door for some of these new vendors to really get a strong footing. It's going to be great for the industry, I think. It's unfortunate, for the brides that are affected, but for new vendors, this is a perfect opportunity for taking on brides that maybe all their vendors were booked,
right?
Or their photographer was already booked and now they have to find somebody else. But I don't think any photographer should be marketing themselves if they're not familiar with the process.
Right.
I've seen it so many times, where a photographer goes in, does a wedding, and then has no idea when the first dance is. They don't know their schedule. They don't know anything. They're just there because they're trying to gain the experience. And I think promoting second shooter positions, even if it's just me asking a friend of mine who's getting into it to tag along. A lot of brides respect that or are open to that because that's more pictures.
Yeah.
You're catching more of the wedding. So it's my job too as a photographer to kind of open the way for other photographers coming up. And
right.
That's controversial. A lot of photographers are very hesitant about doing something like that. But as we go on and we expand our reach and I move beyond the local region, there has to be somebody. And everybody's plan is to grow and do better and make more money and be more successful for their family. At least I would think so.
Right.
So, we have to be open to letting those doors open for others as they come through. And but you don't see that a lot.
Yeah, but I think that's a really great piece of advice for somebody trying to break into the industry is look for essentially a mentor who can help bring you up and do some of those second shooter gigs so that you get your feet wet and you're not in this, event that you have to shoot and you're fully responsible for, that this couple paid $30,000 for or more, or, who knows how much.
Right.
And you mess up, because it happens. And
it does.
In the corporate world, it's like, well, we can just offer you a discount next time or something like that. But hopefully with these couples, there isn't the next time. So,
there isn't.
It's something to consider. I think it just, and I really do truly believe that the vendors in this industry do care. It truly is a field where people are, they do have the best interest of the couple at heart. But obviously there are always exceptions. So
there's sharks in every industry. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. But again, back to those discovery questions, you have to find out who you're working with. They may have the best pictures, but what does that say about what they're going to do for you on a personal level? Because they're going to be spending all day with you. I spent 8 to 10 hours on 80% of my weddings with this couple. So I don't want it to be a situation where I'm uncomfortable or where they're uncomfortable. I want to know their boundaries and I want them to know my boundaries. So that's why I really like to I promote myself as a candid shooter because I don't want to be out there trying to pose people, especially large wedding parties. It's just not something I'm comfortable with. So I don't promote myself as that. So if you could, like this picture here, the one that we got right here, this was an engagement session that I did just about 2 weeks ago. And we got there, every couple's super uncomfortable. They just don't know what to do. They're waiting for direction. So we take it to just, let's walk around, let's see what we see. And I let them create input, and that makes them more comfortable and open up. And this is kind of the first 6 shots that we took. I wouldn't have used them,
Right.
But as they got more comfortable, and that's my key point, is once they got comfortable, this image came out great.
No, it's a beautiful photo. It's actually one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Love it.
But they are, we got done. I probably spent 2.5 hours with them that day. And as soon as we left, they were ecstatic. And that's what I want. That's what I get pleasure out of, is my customers being happy.
Yep. And that's really, despite what you might think with us being on a filmed podcast, I'm the same way. I hate being on camera. I hate hearing myself speak. So I completely empathize with your wife and every person who doesn't like being on the other side of it. And that can be challenging. So I think it all goes back to what you're saying of having that relationship, because if I'm uncomfortable and you're uncomfortable, then this is not going to turn out well, especially even if your significant other is there. It's like, it's not going to look natural. And like that photo looks very natural. Like it's almost like it's not even, it doesn't look posed, to your point.
Yeah, it's like I walked by and seen them,
and Right. You're just like, creeping in the bushes.
Not that I'm a creep, but that's the kind of feel that I think it gives off. And 9 times out of the 10, it's the groom-to-be that's super uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can see that, because I feel like girls probably take more selfies and pictures.
Oh yeah, they're way more acclimated to being behind or in front of a camera. The men have the hardest time, and coaching them through an engagement session is grueling. So, I open conversations about anything else besides the pictures, because that's all they've been thinking about 4 hours leading up to the engagement session is, oh God, how is this going to go? And I'm not comfortable. And do I take my hat off? And, all these questions that go through their head, I try to alleviate that just through basic conversation. It just makes it so much easier and produces a good end result.
Yeah, definitely. What advice would you, I love this one too. That's a pretty picture.
Yeah, the composition was you would not believe there was like thousands of people on the beach.
Really?
Yeah, and like we got down there and it was the first weekend they had opened the beaches up. So
wow.
That was obviously a bad idea. We probably shouldn't have gone down there that day, but on either side of that, and people were so respectful too. Like it was so cool. Like as we were taking that picture, people were stopping.
That's
and
so
letting
cool.
us, yeah, and I'm not used to that. Most of the time, they're just like, right through.
Trying to like duck under the camera. It's like, I can still see you there.
Yeah. Everybody sees you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that was over 1,000 people on that beach that day, and it looks like it's just them too.
Yeah.
I love
it. Incredible. Wow. I love that. And so what advice would you give somebody who is awkward or uncomfortable on camera? Like, is there anything you can do ahead of time other than maybe having a drink or two to, to loosen the nerves?
Yeah.
That's what I do.
I mean, it's don't think about it.
Yeah.
Don't think about it at all. It's just like you and I here. I hate being in front of a camera,
Mm-hmm.
but we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the lights. I'm not worried about the cameras. We're just here talking, and that's the easiest thing you can do. Because anything else, you're going to psych yourself up.
Yeah.
It's planning out the motions. You can't stick to them.
Right.
You have to just kind of go with the flow.
And it's supposed to be like a fun moment, right? Like this is your either engagement shoot or your wedding. It's like don't hype yourself up too much about it, because then you're psyching yourself out for something that's supposed to capture fun and happy times. So it's like,
yeah. And I do that. I accommodate the introverted couples by keeping my session short. So after the ceremony, the wedding party pictures might last 20 to 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And because it's organized, it's efficient, and it lets them get back to enjoying their day, which is what that's all about.
Right.
It's not remember that photo shoot we did on our wedding day? Like it's like, I can't imagine doing that. So I try not to make it that way for them. Mm-hmm. And mostly because of the grooms.
Yeah. I mean,
they're burnt out. Like you sit there and you take 20 pictures, and now you've run into an hour, and you've taken over 200 pictures. They're burnt. They're like, what am I doing here? All my friends are over there drinking.
Right.
Let me get back to the party.
Right.
And and that's that's essentially what that wedding is.
Mm-hmm.
So I make it extremely short and sweet, make it easy and efficient, and then they remember their day as it should be.
Yeah. I love that though. I think that's a good way to look at it, and not psych yourself out and just enjoy yourself, and let's get this done quickly so you can get back to drinking with your family and friends.
Yep, that's right.
Love it. Oh, they're cute too.
Oh, they're the sweetest couple. Like, I think every couple I work with, they're meant to get married.
Oh, that's cute.
But these two, like, they're actually, he's actually a really good friend of mine for the last 15 years, just about. And, but he met her and I was like, what were you doing? You wasted all that time before, because they're absolutely perfect together, and they're able to laugh with each other. And that shoot was super easy. They just had a good time, and that was, but I absolutely love just the candidness of that, because that was genuine laughter. I couldn't have told them to do that. There's no way.
Yeah. Like you probably just said some funny joke and then she just started laughing.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's those moments to me that are worth capturing. Mm-hmm. It's not the pose stuff. It doesn't attract me.
You can see, especially I think even on my personal account, just from Bride Genie, I see all wedding stuff all day long. So, but you can tell, and it's not to say that the post photos aren't beautiful as well, but there's just such a difference in the emotion behind it. Like you can see and feel it in a picture, which is kind of crazy to say, but you can.
I don't know any bride that I've worked with, I'm speaking from my experience, that would want a Vogue style shoot for their wedding.
Right.
I can't think of a one. And of course it's great. It's appealing and it's marketing and it's promoting a product for them, whatever it may be. But it's not something that brides actually want to look like on their wedding day.
Yeah, and I could see maybe if they did a couple pose shots of themselves because they wanted to capture like their dress or how they looked that day.
Of course.
But then when they're with their husband or fiance, future husband or wife, I would think that you'd want it to be more authentic and more like this photo where they're laughing and engaged with each other, and it's not just us like posing Vogue
right
at the camera.
Yeah, or having that like really dark, mysterious look on their face as they stare off into the distance, you know.
Right.
And it's like
without smiles, yeah.
It doesn't connect.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it obviously, like I said, it works in promotion of a product, but it's not, like you said, it's not something that they want to look like and they want to remember their day as.
So other than like candid and posed photos, what are the other styles that couples should be looking for? Like if I were to look at a photographer, I feel like they all shoot different, I'm sure there's a couple main ones, but what are like the main ones that people are, what's like trending now, I guess?
Well, actually candids.
Yeah.
You know, it's becoming the more that the bohemian style grows and this younger generation comes up. When I first started, it was all posed.
Really?
You know, it was like, we want this and this and this. And we still have an essence of that with Pinterest.
Right.
Brides or fiancés, or they have this idea of what they want by making a Pinterest board or something like that. But it's they can tell me all of that and I can do my best to match what they're looking for, because I will do that. You know, I have no problem doing that. But at the end of the day, they're going to take these shots all day long.
Mm-hmm. And I think Pinterest is such a great tool to give the vendor you're working with a starting point of like, hey, this is like what's in my head right now. But then having the conversation around, okay, why do you like this? And then figuring what that reason is. I think that's where you really want to go with the conversation. Like if I were hiring you as my photographer and I showed you photos, I would want to tell you what it was that I like about that. I like that he actually made me laugh and that you were able to get that, you know, like
right.
I like that it seems real. Or the other, like I love that one of them sitting in that doorway, right? Like I loved everything about that. I don't even know why I liked it. It just looked it looked like you just were like walking by and saw that and captured it. So it seemed authentic. So
right. And it's, you know, back to the point of, you know, the styles and the trends on the Pinterest, like some photographers go into a photo shoot with a shot list of what they want to get, how they want to get it, and how they're going to, and that works for some and it doesn't work for others. You know, every photographer is different in that respect. It depends on who you learn from. If you're self-taught, you're extremely uncomfortable. You don't have a plan. You know, it's like if you're new to it, you don't, you know, there is no structure. So you develop your own. You know, a lot of photographers that go into it apprenticed under somebody, or they learn from somebody that they know. And so they kind of just shadow them and follow what they did. Me personally, I've done both. You know, I've done the studio, I've done the production side of things, where it's time-based. You know, it's quantity-based, not quality-based.
Right.
So, you know, and that's, for something like this, for this photo, every photo that gets downloaded off of my website after a wedding, it's stuff like this every time. It's not they'll download 1 to 2 of the large group shots of the wedding party. Right. You know,
so that they have everybody in the picture.
Yeah. But 9 times out of 10, it's the candid stuff. And it's not, I don't think it's going to go backwards. You know, I really don't think we'll get back to that pose thing. I hope not. You know, me personally, it's not my taste. But it's getting to the point where going into a shoot, you have to be comfortable. And I'm totally open-minded. You know, as I go into a shoot, if they've got ideas and they spark up something, they say, "Oh, let's walk over here." I'm like, let's do it. You know, because time's not a constraint to me in those situations, because it's, like I said, I'm more customer service focused. So time's not an issue. Some photographers are like, we got 30 minutes, let's roll. You know, and like, I don't like that. And I don't think, some couples like it because it makes it quick and easy, but they never get comfortable with it. So by the time they get to the wedding day, they're in front of that camera again. They don't feel comfortable. So it's easier for me just to be open to suggestion and be willing to learn something new. Yeah. Because that girl right there has far many ideas than I do. Right. You know, I mean, she's thought about every pose she's going to do for the last 2 days. Yeah. So, and So that's what makes it easy for me.
Yeah, and unlike her fiance and or husband, depending on where they are at in their timeline, she's probably thinking about it in an excited way, where it's like, oh, we can do this shot and we'll be at the beach, and I know this one spot, and she's like getting all hyped up about it, where he's like, all right, whatever you want to do.
Right, yeah. And that's every single groom is like, I'm just letting her do what she wants to do.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, no problem, because that's it. When it comes down to it, yes, it's about the both of them. But I was just explaining this to a bride yesterday. You know, this day she's dreamt about since she knew what a wedding was.
Right.
So, you know, not to say that men can't have their say in, you know, how certain things go, but
Of course not. Yeah, of course.
let her make her day.
Right.
You know, so it's but I'd love to see couples like that, because you can just tell that he cares more about what she wants than his own wants and needs.
Right.
You know, which is how it's going to work.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of a relationship, and, you know, figuring out like what's important to your partner, and then, you know, making those compromises. So if you don't really care where you're posing at the beach and she's all about it, like, let her decide.
That's
like,
right.
You know,
Yeah.
like, why not? Or
Yeah.
if he's really into a certain flavor of cake and he's dead set on chocolate, and you're like, you know, I don't really care. I'll probably have like half a slice and I won't even really get that into it. Let him pick. Like,
Yeah.
I
Get a
think
4-tier and he gets a little piece at the top.
Right. It's like,
You know? Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, no, I think that's all really good advice. And are you seeing a lot of, I mean, with the couples you're working with, have you had many that have had to rebook, or what are you seeing on that front? Because I know that's a big thing that's top of mind for the brides right now.
Yeah, it's in our region. There has not been a huge rebooking problem. It just hasn't been that way for us. You know, obviously, as you expand into the, you know, the metropolis side of weddings and city-based weddings, then you start running that issue a lot more. But in rural parts of the country, they're just going with it. You know, I've had 20% rebook, and then 80% stay on time. So this year was kind of funny because I limited my bookings going into the spring, actually. So, and that was done on purpose. So I wasn't nearly as affected, but as the summer goes, I'm booked. So, and I'm booked through the fall. Now I've had an influx of inquiries for brides that have had to rebook, but their photographer's already taken.
Right.
You know, so I'm trying to encourage, you know, social media is great because I get that outreach, and I'm able to put my opinion out there. Not that some people, you know, care about that, but from a photographer's standpoint, putting out recommendations for these brides to go by when they are so inexperienced in doing all this stuff. They're doing it for the first time. So when they're so inexperienced, and I'm able to tell them, hey, maybe try for a sunrise shoot. You know, maybe try for a sunrise wedding, and that way some of your vendors can actually book twice that day. You know,
Right.
And
that's interesting. Yeah.
you know, so it's like, and I've done that in the past. I've had a sunrise wedding, and then I've done my afternoon wedding. So it's an interesting concept, and it's foreign to some people. But in these times, I think we should be thinking outside the box of how we can. If you really love your photographer, and you really love your caterer, and you really love your florist, make it easier for yourself by being open to whether it's time changes or even non-traditional days. You know, Friday, Sunday, you know, something like that, because we want to keep them too. We don't want to lose our clients, you know,
Right.
based on the fact that something that out of our control happened. So
Exactly.
I opened it up and announced that, even working with my venues, I told them, any bride that wants to book on a Sunday, like, let's do it, you know, because Sundays normally it's my editing day,
Right.
you know, so like, you know, there's hardly any weddings I shoot on Sunday unless it's a traditional, really traditional wedding. You know, most of the time it's Saturday. So
Right.
it's I told them, like, whoever, just open it up to them, see if they want to do it. So, and then the hardest thing is to watch is when a bride rescheduled and then things got extended, and then here we are again, postponing for the second time.
Yeah.
You know, I can't imagine.
I can't either. I mean, planning at like the first time is already stressful enough, and then having to go back and replan it the second and perhaps third time, because sure, you have the outline, you have the contacts of the vendors you're working with, but to your point, optimistically, let's say you can move 80% of them, like there still might be a couple vendors that you can't rebook, and it's not at the vendor's fault. It's like, I was already booked that day. Like, I didn't know that COVID was coming. Like, otherwise we could have planned around this. But that's, you know, I definitely feel for the couples that are dealing with that, and the vendors too. I mean, that's, you know, and now when we're having the rebooking conversation, you're not only, I hate to use the word competing, but kind of competing with the other brides rebooking, but all the newly engaged brides. So it's like you have everybody rebooking. There were people already booked, and now there's new people getting engaged.
Right.
So we're going to have this huge, I think probably in 2021, like surplus of weddings and potentially like not enough vendors. So then if you've, especially a couple, if they've been dating for, let's say, like 5 years, and then they were engaged 2 years.
Right.
And now you're telling me we have to wait another year. It's like, I know elopements are actually trending right now because they just don't want to wait longer. It's like, we'll have the big party thing later, but we want to get married. Like,
yeah. And that's, you know, I'm all about that because one, on a smaller scale, you can go anywhere you want to.
Yep.
You know, well, as long as the CDC says you can.
Within
you know?
guidelines.
Yeah, you know, but like, you know, to a point, you can go and get married in destinations that typically wouldn't even be considered.
Right.
You know, and they're beautiful. Mm-hmm. So if it takes you, an officiant, and your future husband or wife to do that, by all means.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm all about the elopements. I think it's great. I think it honestly will change the way that the wedding industry does things. You know, I really do believe that. I think things are going to get smaller. Mm-hmm. And like you said, 2021 comes and it's going to be a madhouse because think of all the people that got engaged during quarantine. You know, it's no longer going to be January, February.
Right.
You know, we're going to see an influx in September, October. And just as soon as everybody gets out of this, and, you know, depending on what COVID does, I fully expect September, October to really pick up and be, you know, another season, you know, for booking season.
Right.
So, and that's where, you know, what I said before, these new vendors have this opportunity to really grow. So it's hopefully they're out there, and hopefully they're going to take advantage of the situation, and because I'm all about community. Mm-hmm. You know, I think if we all do well, then the industry is safe.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's it's a small business, and I know that vendors are very protective over their clients and over their business and their name, but I don't think, I like to think of competition as healthy. You know, it's not something to be, because it only, I think it sparks innovation. I know that's where Bride Genie came from. I think that it brings forward better products. Like, if you know that you have a lot of good photographers in your area, you're going to shoot better. Like, just because you need to compete at that level. So
yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, and beyond, a lot of artists in general, whether it's photography or painters, they are so competitive with each other that it is unhealthy.
Right.
You know, and I can't tell you, like, people are so put off by me, or caught off guard rather, when I'm willing to network with other photographers. Like, these other photographers don't know how to handle that, you know, or I contact a photographer and I say, hey, I had this client that has this idea that I can't really match, but I thought you'd be perfect for it. Would you like me to give them your information? Mm-hmm. And they go, what? You know, thanks for thinking of me. Like,
right.
And they don't know how to take that, because even on Instagram, like with the social media thing, it's so petty.
Yeah.
It's so petty, because I can go through and I like the images that I like. I don't care who took them,
right.
You know, but photographers that follow me, you know, they'll go through and I don't get any likes from the other photographers, you know, and I think that's part of it. Like, it's not a competition thing at that point. It's just they're just so afraid to open themselves up to networking with other people because they're afraid to lose the business, you know, and it's, you know, I don't get that, because I'd much rather have that network and be able to reach out to somebody let's say because of the COVID situation, you can't take all your rebookings. So you got to transfer your deposit. At least that's what I would do, and I have done. If I was unavailable, I transfer the deposit. That's the fair thing to do. I can't, I don't want to be that guy.
Right.
So I'm going to make it easy on them. So I want to have people that I can reach out to and trust and say, look, I know this person so well that I trust them with your wedding day.
Right.
That's a big deal because it takes a huge weight off their shoulders. Even though it's not me, it's somebody that I trust.
Yep.
So,
and I think that's so important. I mean, we have one photographer in this area, and he has a association of photographers. And I know just in our community in Raleigh that because he's put this association today, actually he was one of the kind of, essentially the podcast came out of an idea that he had, right? Like we were talking and he was like, hey, what would be great if we filmed the top questions that brides should be asking photographers, but they're not. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a brilliant idea. And then I thought of all the conversations I was having with like different vendors and how much great content came out of it, right? And he has this group on, I hate that I'm not remembering the name right now. He's with Azul. I don't know if you know him, but he is very well respected. And I think it's because, to your point, he supports the idea of a community.
Right.
And, I think that when vendors, and that's what I'm trying to push with Bride Genie, when vendors come together and support each other and they take control over the industry, which, to be honest, has lost control, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's very fragmented. It's very, everybody's kind of looking out for themselves. But when you band together as a community, I think it strengthens everything, like everything.
Yeah.
So I love the idea that you support like a community of photographers, because I think that for not just photography, but DJs and wedding planners and everything, every part, florist, anything, having the support of your peers, it's not going to hurt you. It's just going to make the whole industry stronger.
Oh, right. And, when you're starting out as a photographer, it's easy to go to people and be like, hey, want to do a styled shoot? Would you guys be interested in doing that? And it's going to help you and it's going to help me. The only reason you're doing that is to help yourself, right? So you want to build material, even though, you give them the pictures. The problem is down the line, once that a photographer gets established, that goes away. So now, these small businesses or other vendors have to rely on these newer photographers to come in and offer something to help them out.
Right.
I've never quit doing that. It's very important to me. And I don't, like my commercial work, I keep local. I don't want to take that beyond that. I just enjoy, it's something that's like a hobby of mine, so I help my local businesses in my area, and that's all I'm interested in. But it stops. Like these photographers get deep and they start booking 30 plus weddings a year, and then they stop reaching out to these other vendors and helping them, and that's like, so when I came back and started revamping everything, I went right to that. And people were just like, oh my God, yeah, let's do it. It's like, man, how long has it been since you've heard from somebody? Like they were just but it's great. I think even if you're not working, like I see it all the time on Instagram or Facebook, where they're organizing these styled shoots for multiple photographers to come out and build portfolio work and do all that, which is awesome. I love stuff like that. I wish we did more of that in my local region. But having him with his association and where he's community over competition, that's where he gains his authority and his respect.
Right.
It's not through bashing. I've experienced that 100 times. So it's for him to go through and actually make an attempt to reach out to these people and make those connections and build that network is great. I applaud him for that, for sure.
Do you have anything like that in South Carolina where it's like a network or an association of any sort?
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
There are. And right now I'm more focused on my local stuff and building beyond that later. But the local photographers are, they have an association, but it's very cliquey.
Yeah, I can see that too. Yeah.
And I love that. I know multiple photographers in it, and I love them to death. And not to speak bad on anything, but there's a point where that starts to work against you too. you know?
Sure.
So it's like finding that fine balance, like you have to, because it either becomes, oh, this great community where we can all help each other, or, hey, like this one guy came in and tried to undercut us, and we're not going to let that happen. Mm-hmm. You know, so and that's where it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
So, and it's, you have to take it as it comes, because you can't control everything. So I try to, like I said, work with the people that I know personally. Mm-hmm. That's it. So I can't imagine trying to go into an association right now and put myself out there as being a part of that, you know, just not at this time.
Yeah. Well, and I think it all depends on where somebody's at. And I think it depends on the association. I mean, I don't know much about it, so, because I'm not a photographer, so I don't know. I can see why it'd be easy for any association to become very cliquey.
Yeah.
I mean, just naturally human nature. I mean, I think of all the networking events that I've gone to, and the easiest thing is to gravitate to the group of people you know, right? Like that's just what you do, because you're uncomfortable and you're in a room of maybe 100 people and you know like 3. So you're going to go find your 3 friends and hang out with them.
Yep.
And, you know, I had to be coached on by our last podcast guest, shout out to Lewis, that you can't do that. Like you have to go and go outside your comfort zone, but that's not easy. And, you know, it depends on where you're at. Like, I know I was kind of pushed to do that a little bit more than some of my fellow student peers when I was in college, because I was just at a different point. So,
well, maybe you needed it more.
Yeah. And
you know?
yeah, right. And everybody's at a different point in life. And I think it's important to like respect that and acknowledge it and just be positive. I think we need that a lot more right now.
Absolutely. Just every facet of our life.
Yeah, like all of them.
Yeah.
Everybody should just be a little bit nicer to everybody.
I totally agree. I think, you know, not to be cliche about it, but I mean, love changes everything. Mm-hmm. You know, and I had to learn that personally. It wasn't from watching hundreds of people love each other. It was learning that love on a personal level, and you know, with my daughter and my wife. Like that's what it took. So it's you know, it made my life for the better. So if we can all be a little bit more positive and be a little bit more accepting, then I think we can get there.
Yeah.
You know, but it's going to take, you know, it's going to take all parties to kind of partake.
Yeah. Well, and that's always the challenge, right? It's like you have to get multiple people on board with what the goal and the mission is. And, you know, I think it's okay to be a little guarded and protective of yourself and your business, but, you know, just to not do it in a malicious or hateful way is important. I mean, it's been a lot of that.
Well, it's impression, you know, or it's maybe that's all they knew.
Right.
So
you never know. I mean, that's a lot of how somebody was raised comes into play.
Yeah. You know? Or just their experience in the industry. Mm-hmm. You know, so I can't blame somebody for safeguarding their clients or not wanting to disclose certain information or being malicious, because maybe that's the industry they grew up in and that's their self-defense mechanism, you know, and it's, you know, that's why I try not to get too deep into it. Mm-hmm. I try to take care of my couples and be done. And, you know, but it's, but that comes down to, I just be communicative with everybody.
Right.
You know, it's, if I expect to change, I have to change.
Right.
So, that's how I try to live. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that you're in a really great place because you have gone through like this rebranding. You're really in control of exactly who you're working with and how your image is being, how your message is being put out and how your image is being perceived, which I think is really great. I think
I appreciate that.
With how much time people have at home, that they should think about that too. You know, like how do I make sure that who I am is being accurately represented? You know, I think that gets lost a lot, especially on social media. It's so easy to just put out what you think the public wants to see rather than what actually like truly represents you as a human.
Right.
And behind all these small businesses are people.
Right. And it's going to come out eventually.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that's my advice to vendors is be yourself, whether it's awkward, weird, silly, whatever it is, be yourself, because at some point it's going to come out and you're not going to feel good about it.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to be yourself than to pretend to be somebody else all day long.
Well, and like, why would I just can't imagine having to go through life like having to pretend to be something I'm not, and I don't know how I could work under that circumstance. Like,
Well, like, I mean, like you and Chris, I believe his name was Chris. You guys had talked about the use of other people's work.
yes,
You know, I can't imagine being new, stealing somebody else's work that's way above,
my level of production,
right?
Yep.
And then trying to live up to that constantly. You know, like that is not worth it to me, because if you can't deliver that same product, then what is the point of taking it from somebody else?
Yeah.
You know, along from the moral standpoint, it's not right at all. But,
Right.
but you know what I mean? But like, how do you live up to that?
Right.
I can't imagine. It wouldn't push me. It would discourage me. So it's in the world of instant gratification or instant success, it's people are more motivated now to do things like that, which is awful.
Right.
You know, I see it all the time on social media. Local photographers that have their work poached by other types of artists, maybe painters, you know, that are painting their photos and then selling them. And it's like, man, we know exactly where you got that from. So, but again, I can't imagine trying to live up to somebody else's level of production if I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
You know? So again, be true to yourself. If you're not, there's a market for everybody. I think that's what people lose in all of this.
Right.
You know, there's a market for the $10,000 a day photographers, and there's a market for the $500 a day photographers. And you just have to know where you're at and stick there until you're ready to move to that next market. You know, and being comfortable with that idea. Nobody wants slow growth. Nobody wants that. So it's, as I teach people that I come in contact with, that's the biggest word of advice I could give them, because I outgrew myself in passion. I outgrew my business, you know, to the point where I wasn't ready for it. I took it on too fast and grew too fast. So now I'm able to actually slow down and control every facet of it. Before, I tried to control everything but couldn't, you know, but it took me slowing down to do that.
Right. But I think that's the awareness behind that is important, right? Like a lot of people, they can't kind of sit back and look at what they're doing and seeing how is this not only affecting me and what I'm producing, but you're also working with couples. And it's like, again, this isn't a corporation that you're shooting. Not to say that a corporation doesn't deserve fabulous pictures, but there's not the emotional tie to it. And I would think you would want to under promise and over deliver rather than the other way around.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like,
and then, you know, a good friend of mine, when I first started doing the portrait stuff, she taught me that. It was a huge learning experience for me. She taught me a lot, and I'm extremely grateful for that education that she gave me. But that's exactly what it was, you know, under promise, over deliver. And now, you know, 12 plus years, 10 years as a professional, I can say this is what I'm capable of doing, because I figured that out. But in the beginning, that's absolutely what you should do.
Right.
You know, and it's very important for any business, whether it's photography, whether it's a retail store, it doesn't matter. Under promise, over deliver.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. I think, I mean, people should be able to relate to that, right? Like, I don't know how long you've been married for, but like for me, I think about like a dating profile, right? You don't want to put like your best pictures up that don't look anything like you.
Right.
Because then you show up and they're like, who's this?
Wait a minute.
Like,
that looks 10 years younger.
Right. Did I just get catfished? Like, is that what's happening right now? Like, so it's kind of the same concept, but obviously mine's a like silly example, but like, using somebody else's photos is the exact same concept of catfishing somebody. Like you're literally showing somebody else's work that you didn't participate in. You didn't edit these photos. You didn't take them. You didn't have anything to do with them.
Nope. And if you're new and you don't have what you would think of as a good portfolio, go out and make it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like, you have that ability, now, if you're just, you know, completely closed off from the market and you don't have friends that you can put on a dress, you know, that's going to be tough for you.
Yeah.
You know, but that goes back to your point. It's not about the 3 friends you know, it's about the people that you don't, and being open to coming out of that box for a little bit. That's going to teach them far more than just going out there and trying to get a portfolio built. That's going to teach them how to deal with people and deal with the couples that they're going to meet, you know. So it's more valuable from that standpoint, I think, from a communication level. But build your own portfolio. If you're just starting out and you're young, and most of us started out really young. I started out taking pictures when I was 15, 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
So by the time I got out of high school, I had a full-time job. So it was easy. Mm-hmm. But those 3 years gave me an opportunity to learn everything I needed to. I had a part-time job because I had school, and I had plenty of friends at school. So it made it super easy to get out there and just take pictures. So I recommend that to anybody just starting out. Just go build it. You don't have to have the most extravagant, on-location, international weddings. You can build it right in your backyard. It's that simple. Right. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's really great to recognize. And, the other thing too is that not everybody, to your point, is going to have that kind of access, but mm-hmm. I don't think it should discourage people from trying. And I think, you're going to get out of it what you put into it, right? So the right. more that you're trying to network and do all the things that you're talking about earlier, the more you're going to see a reward on that. And then also a really good point that you mentioned is that a lot of photographers specifically, and there are other vendor categories as well, but don't do this full time. I mean, it's rare to find a full-time wedding photographer
Absolutely.
Where all they do is shoot weddings. I mean, that's very rare. Usually I've seen, full-time photographers who shoot other things because weddings, it's hard to do that as your only income.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that? How do you go through a rebranding process, or how do you build that portfolio, or how do you find the time to find the clients and engage with them and be as dedicated as they need you to be when you also have to support your family?
Right. Yeah. So basically the way that I did it was I designated certain days. That was it. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. We get caught up. Of course, you get caught up in your daily life and your daily grind and trying to, oh God, I got to do this by Sunday and I got to do this and that. But managing your time. Mm-hmm. If you can't do that, you're not going to be successful. So if you can't say, I've got 6 hours to do this, and if I don't get it done in 6 hours, it's not going to get done, then you've got a problem. So you may go through mistakes and you may fall on your face a few times till you get to that 6 hour mark, but eventually you'll get there. It's about educating yourself. The more you know about your job, whether it's photography, whatever it is, mm-hmm. The more you understand about it, the better you'll be. But time management's everything. If you can't be efficient, you're working backwards.
Yeah.
It's awful. I've seen it 100 times. My turnaround is so quick compared to others, and I still haven't figured that out. Where it takes 2 to 3 weeks for other photographers to turn around a simple portrait shoot. I get it turned around in less than 24 hours.
Because, that's unusually fast.
Right.
Which is great.
Yeah. I mean, by the time that picture that you've seen with the red door, mm-hmm. I had that picture of them 5 minutes after leaving the engagement session.
Wow.
5 minutes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was done. So it's like I just don't understand how it takes 2 to 3 weeks for some of these people. I don't know if it's I know obviously if you're full time, then you've got a huge plate. But if I can do that within 5 minutes of leaving, I haven't found the disconnect. Yeah. That's a question for me, for everybody else, because I don't know. But it's, but for somebody who works full time and does this on the weekend, just be more efficient, find better, quicker, easier way to do things, even down to your editing. Even if you have to outsource it, mm-hmm. outsource your editing, maybe that's what it's going to take, but know your price point. If you're doing it part-time and you need this money to come in and you need it to pay your bills and you need it to support your family, you have to know how much to charge. You have to. Even if you're new. If it takes you $1,200 a wedding and you need to book 3 weddings a month, then you need to charge $1,200 for a wedding and you need to book 3 a month. Mm-hmm. It's that easy.
Right.
At least
coming up with a budget and
right. Yeah. It's not
backwards.
as easy as, it's not easy to book them, mm-hmm. but at least you know what you need to do.
Right.
So that's a starting point for anybody.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice as well, though. Thinking logically about how much do I need to survive? And then, I think also analytics, right, is so important. Doing research and knowing your market, right. Because I don't think enough vendors do that. I don't think a lot of, I could be wrong, but And I know for certain the couples are lacking that knowledge a lot of how much the average photographer in Raleigh or in versus New York would cost, right? Like
Right.
it's night and day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If we're doing a wedding in New York City versus downtown Raleigh, those are two very different price points.
Absolutely.
So having vendors that know not only what they should be charging for an event, but then how do you get the quality of work to match that, and then making sure that you're really just performing to that level. And
Right.
if it means bringing in other shooters or consulting with somebody who might have more experience. I mean, if I were a new photographer, I would want to bring on somebody more experienced, even if it meant I had to split the gig with them just so that I'm not floundering.
Right. Nobody wants to do that anymore.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to watch. Like, nobody is willing to split the pie. You know, and it's sad for the new guys. It's sad for the new girls because it's really taken away from. Now, if you happen to be friends with a photographer that does weddings on the weekends, you're golden. But it's the person that's truly passionate about it has no outlet. And it's extremely tough to get started. And if you don't make it within 5 years, you're done. So it's like there's so many things stacked against you just as a business owner, not as a photographer, but as a business owner that you're not going to struggle any different in this industry than you're going to struggle in a retail industry. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing, maybe even harder. So knowing what it takes to survive and then knowing what you want. If you want more time off, between October and January, you have to account for that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't even think it to that level. They really don't. They don't say, okay, if I have to miss 8 weddings in the winter, then I need to make this per wedding during the prime time. Mm-hmm. So like they're not even accounting for that. And
right.
So, but again, that's what it is. You have to know what you're worth, and what you're worth is what it takes for you to live. That's everything.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is like if I was a wedding photographer and I got into it because this is a passion of mine, I probably didn't go to business school. Maybe I did, but maybe not. But if you're going to take on the challenge of running a photography business, I mean, you really do need to think of it as the CMO, the CEO, the CFO, COO. You're wearing every hat because you're it. I mean, a lot of these are mom and pop shops, and maybe it's a husband-wife team. Maybe it's just you. Like maybe you are the only one running this business. Right. In both scenarios, it's challenging. So it's, how do I make sure that I'm managing this as a professional business and then I'm coming off professional to my clients and getting the leads that I need and then doing everything I have to do to execute it, and then all of the other stuff on the back end, editing, and all these other fun
Everything
things
else
that happen that I have no idea about, like just not being a photographer. But there's so much that goes into it, and you're not a corporation, right? You can't just.
There's not a board, it's like, and most of the time it's like you said, it's just you.
Right.
So you have to, it goes back to knowing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. If you're passionate about something and you want to make it into a career, I would think, like myself, I dove into it, mm-hmm. Going into it with some college education, but not a full degree. It was, okay, if I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to know it. And you just have to do that. Mm-hmm. Because if I go into a meeting with somebody and I can't translate for them to understand, then what am I doing there?
Right.
I'm going to shoot myself out of the market is what's going to happen. So you have to know everything. It doesn't matter if it's from your exposure to your composition to how do I run QuickBooks, it's mm-hmm. just, it goes beyond the camera. And that's really, I knew the business part of it, no problem. But when I first got into it, it was extremely difficult to learn all that on my own. Mm-hmm. So I try to pass on as much as I can to other people that I know that are struggling, that can benefit from my lessons learned, because it was awful.
Yeah.
It was awful trying to grow that. And like I said, within 3 years, I was shot.
Yeah.
So it's, I try to pass it on, like I said.
I believe it. I mean, I think about the situation that I'm in, and my team is incredible. I mean, I'm so blessed to have them, truly. And I think about even something as simple as social media. I can't manage it alone. I mean, if I didn't have Erica, And Laura helping me with our Instagram and Facebook, I would be so overwhelmed because I don't know if anybody realizes how much work goes into creating authentic content, getting real followers, putting stuff out there that people care about and want to engage with. And then back to what we said before, trying to represent what you want your brand to stand for.
Right.
I mean, for me and personally, Bride Genie, like we're about bringing authenticity and like unifying the market, right?
Right.
And helping connect couples and brides and adding that educational piece. But how do I add that into an Instagram picture? It's hard.
Right.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of time goes into and thought and honestly, like the care. I mean, we'll have 3-hour meetings on the weekend to talk about this stuff. And it's
Right,
about
yeah.
Instagram. And it drives me crazy
Oh, it
because I
does.
hate personally social media, but it's so important because we want to be able to connect to our customers.
Yeah.
So it's so much that goes into it. And I think it's so under appreciated how much work vendors
yeah.
put into putting together their content and trying to show who they are through these platforms.
Well, it's time away, right? So
You're not making money off of that. Let me tell you, you're spending it.
the return is much later. You know, the return is much later. And if nothing else, it just builds on what you're already doing, and that's what I've found the most of. So when I sit down with a couple, I rely on my personality. I rely on my experience to sell a product, right? Mm-hmm. So, but without social media, I'd have to carry an album around with me like I used to, right? So I'd have to constantly keep this huge album in my trunk of my best work. Mm-hmm. And every time I went to a consultation, I had to take up 4 chairs and a whole table, whether it was at a coffee shop or a restaurant, and put this stuff out on the table.
Yeah.
Now my couples are finding me on Instagram, and then they're messaging me. It takes, honestly, it takes half the workout.
Yeah.
It really does, and it's beautiful for that. So the return is there. It's just indirect, I think. It's another investment that you're making just to make it less time later.
Exactly. It's very important. It helps connect. It's easier, to your point. You don't have to look for leads in a phone book anymore, or you don't have to carry around a giant book.
Yep.
So it's more practical for sure. And it's what we're used to, like it's easier for a couple to go and find photographers, and it helps talk to your credibility, right? Like especially if you can talk about or post couples that you've shot before, you now have instant referrals that you can reach out to. There's so many great uses for it.
Yep.
But I never realized until very recently how much work goes into creating good quality authentic content, and there's a lot that goes into it.
When I first started the social media, because like I said earlier, like I had to learn that. So when I first started it, I really I wanted to pay somebody to do it for me. Mm-hmm. Like I'll just pay somebody and it'll be done. Well, me being who I am, it's not that it wasn't good enough. It just wasn't to my standard, it was great content, but it either wasn't as often as I needed it to be, or I didn't get the reactions that I liked. I wasn't getting the feedback. Mm-hmm. So I took it over myself, and it's, yes, my wife gets on me all the time because I'm either at my computer editing, I'm on my phone with social media, or I'm on the phone talking to somebody else, or, mm-hmm. It's a constant, and, she gets on me all the time. Just put the phone down. So, what I found was after 9 o'clock, I didn't get any response off my post, so I quit posting after 9 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
But but it's stupid stuff like that where it's, again, it takes away from everything else, and it's not worth that.
Yeah.
It's not worth that. So a week ahead of time, I'll map out a certain portion of my posts, mm-hmm. and then all I have to do is copy paste, put the picture in, and boom, I'm done.
Yeah. That's really great though. I think Scott, we're gonna have to cut one piece out here and send it to one of my partners where you said you were stopping at 9 o'clock, because I think I'm stopping around 1 a.m. So I think we need to forward that to him and just say, this is a normal stop time.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because and it's different for everybody, which is amazing. Because on Fridays I can post till 11 and get feedback.
Right.
But on weekdays after 9 o'clock, it's done. Mm-hmm.
Right, because
God, the insights that you have to this stuff is unbelievable.
The analytics are amazing.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and I really thoroughly enjoy, not from a sociopathic point of view, but I just enjoy getting feedback from my work.
Yeah, of course. It's
affirmation,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So it's but as the schedule became clear of when I was getting the most interaction, cut the rest of the time out. I didn't need to do that anymore. So I don't need to try to post something at 8:00 in the morning. I can wait till 11 or 12.
Right.
So it's learning that. It takes time, but once you get there, you're there. And for you though, are you attracting more outside of your region on like social media? Like when you post that late, is it like people from like the Netherlands and people from?
Well, I think, and a lot of it too, it's not always necessarily social media posting. It's just that I have a never-ending list of things in my notebook that need to be done, and I feel like no matter how long I work, it just never gets done.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to also get better at finding the content ahead of time and putting it in like a scheduling app so that I'm not trying to scramble the morning of with my team saying like, hey, what are we getting posted today?
Right.
So it's trying to be a little bit more proactive on the post. So it's not necessarily that I want them in the morning I'm posting. It's just that I'm trying to figure out what are we either doing for the day, but then I also have been reading. I feel like I could basically be an attorney at this point for how many contracts I've had to go through and read. I mean, I always thought that they were overpaid. No, they are not. They're underpaid. Yep. I never will be an attorney having to read all those contracts, and I read something 5 times and I'm just like, what did they just say? What was the point of that sentence? And oh my God. Yeah. So it's a lot of different, because I'm in the position where I'm wearing all the hats minus the technical ones. So thank God.
Right. Well, I mean, but what a beautiful position for you to be in, because it's, again, you have the control as far as what you're putting out there.
Right. Exactly.
You can't say that if you hire a marketing company. Yeah, you get input, but they're making the mistakes that you're not okay with. If I make the mistake, it's fine. If I pay somebody and they make a mistake, then it's more difficult to swallow.
Yeah.
So it's I'd rather learn how to do it myself and spend an extra 30 minutes a day doing it than paying somebody an hourly rate that they're going to charge me for 10 hours, and it's going to be astronomical. Mm-hmm. So it's a trade-off, and the benefit for me doing that was I learned everything about my business that I possibly could. Mm-hmm. And it allowed me to make better decisions. So I can, back when advertising in the paper was a thing, you didn't get any real feedback. It was like, we have 23,000 subscribers. Well, that's great, but how many people are interacting with that? Well, we don't know because it's paper, so it's like,
like as long as they see it, then
they think that's an impression,
right.
Which, it's an impression, but I need action behind that.
Yeah.
So you don't really know. The only way you could rely on that was phone calls, and there was never enough of them depending on what you were paying. So it's advertising costs of Facebook has made it unbelievably cheap to advertise.
It really has. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
Like I said, we won't go down a Facebook rabbit hole because my thoughts on Zuckerberg are my own.
Yeah.
We'll leave that for now. That'll open up a whole nother can of worms. But
next time.
Next time we'll definitely have to go down that. We'll just
have a Mark Zuckerberg bashing session.
Oh God. I mean, it wouldn't be hard, but I do think that for businesses and what Facebook does, what the analytics that they provide are invaluable. Like they are so great, and they really do show you who you're hitting, and all these great things. But then there's the whole other side
back
of
end
it.
thing, I mean, the cost. It used to be where I had to book 4 clients to recoup the cost for my advertising. Mm-hmm. It's nowhere near that.
Yeah.
I can book 1 client and recoup the cost of my advertising and still profit.
Yeah.
It's like, it's unbelievable. So there's no reason to not take advantage of that.
Certainly not. With how inexpensive it is, and that's a whole nother rant too on some of the websites that are out there for wedding vendors to market on and how much they cost. Hence why Bride Genie came into the market, and we're making it inexpensive. So.
Yeah, and it's
that's another rant.
My dad, I love him, and he works super, super hard, and he got onto a particular site, and it was, I mean, the monthly charge. There is no way you're recouping that.
No.
There's no way. So I don't know how anybody else does it. I really don't, unless, maybe it's the advertising dollars, I guess. I mean, maybe that's how they're recouping it. But the monthly fee that you pay is unreal.
It's astronomical, and there's no clear ROI. And then, my whole gripe, and I'm not going to mention names, but is that they're really taking advantage of small businesses, and I have a big problem with that. It's my whole family are, small business owners, and that's kind of the environment that I grew up around. So when I'm talking to small businesses who this is their only option and they're not getting the return they need, but there's nothing else, like this is the marketing platform other than social media, it's like right. I feel for them, and especially when we're going through these weird times where there's no income coming in, and they're still getting hundreds and hundreds of dollars drafted out of their account every month. It's like, what are we doing here, guys?
Right.
Like there needs to be a change. Yeah. So
I don't know if it was because of the exclusivity of it, or the narrowness of the market, or outlet rather, but I just don't see how people are okay with paying that. Just from my dad's in a band, and that's what he used it for.
Got it. Yep.
So there's no way. I mean, I could see a photographer maybe. Mm-hmm. I could see a photographer recouping that from one booking.
Right.
But a band over the course of a year, there's no way. So it's having something. That's what makes me so excited about the Bride Genie. Is it's not going to be based on advertising dollars.
Right. It's not a pay to the top model anymore.
Right.
It's hey, you connected with somebody who matches the criteria that you have.
Right.
You're paying to quote them, and it's
right.
nominal. I mean, I don't think I'm thinking I don't think it'd be possible to spend more than $100 a month. And that's if you were like super active and you were booking, you had nobody on your calendar for that month, and you were quoting everybody. Like, it's because that's my partner who developed the tech behind it, I mean, he has a venue in Cary. He's had it for 10 years, and he was frustrated. I mean, he had no ROI. He's extremely intelligent and tech savvy. That's his true field, is in tech and IT, and was like, I'm not paying for this anymore. Like, it doesn't work. So
and those people need to exist, because otherwise there would be no Bride Genie. There would be no Google. There would be no Amazon.
Right.
And it's like, but to what point does it go beyond a startup to the point where it's just taking advantage? I mean, honestly, some of those sites benefited me in the past. Mm-hmm. But it just got to the point where it's just like you said, no ROI, and you're losing far more than you're putting into, or that you're getting out of it.
Well, and the problem is too, and I can say this from personal experience, is it's a lot easier to cater a model where you're charging extremely heavy on the vendor side and making it free for the couples, and because it's harder to attract couples, right? Like they're a harder consumer because this isn't their business. It's an easier model. So for us to come in and, again, from experience, changing that model to where we're not taking advantage of the vendor, we're not overcharging them, we're not just putting all of the cost on them, is not easy.
Right.
It's a much harder hurdle to get over, but when we do it and we make this model proven, that's when the change will happen. And it's truly, again, it's empowering vendors so that they have control over their industry, and it's helping the customers and the couples, because they are just as frustrated with the booking process as well.
Right.
It's very frustrating because they're looking to get in touch with you, and sometimes it takes 3 different types of contact points, especially if they're using one of the sites. You'll never answer on that because they're more than half are fake.
Right.
And now they're calling you. Maybe they got your voicemail because you were busy or you're on another call, and now they have to email you. And it's like, okay, I just had to reach out to you 3 different times. Is he not responsive? No, not the case. Not the case. I'm just on another call. The first one is not a real option. And then you emailed me. Or DM'd me on Instagram or whatever.
Right.
But it's frustrating.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
for everybody,
because it doesn't set a good impression with the couples for us.
No, because if this is what I think is the standard in the industry, and I never get responses back, now I'm like, oh, this doesn't work. So what do I do? And again, if I reached out to you and you didn't answer, it might make me think less of you as a professional when that's not really the case. It's just like, no, there's just easier and better ways for me to get in touch with you, and certain sites are not one of them. Like,
right.
Emailing me is a better one. Calling me, leaving me a message is a better one. So my goal is to change all that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's going to be well received.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I hope so.
You know, at least for me, it's amazing to see something new come out of something that, you know, you would have never thought. I'd never thought. Let me just speak for myself, but I never thought there was going to be an alternative. You know, and that's why I'm really excited about it, because it's big for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
it really does mean a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to be super amazing to see where it goes and how big it gets, you know.
Mm-hmm.
When I have a message from a customer, I'm within 5 minutes, you know, like whether it's Instagram, Facebook, email, doesn't matter. Within 5 minutes, I've sent you something.
Right.
Whether it's, hey, I'm busy, I'll get back to you, or it's, what kind of quote do you need worked up?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, I can't tell you how many times I have to convert that quote request into a consultation, you know, because that's hard. That's hard to do, but that's, for me, that's what works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, getting them in person, I have a far better chance of turning that into a potential customer than just trying to send out a bunch of quotes.
Of course.
And,
I mean, I completely agree with that. And I think that every vendor would. I think once you, and couple, I mean, having that in-person connection, that's why I think the wedding shows are really great for couples to attend, because they do get an opportunity to connect with people. I went to one for my first time as a vendor, but then also walked around. And I mean, they're overwhelming, but there's I think there's a lot of good to say, even if you didn't book a single vendor from the wedding show, just to see the type of connection you get from talking to somebody rather than just stalking their Instagram and emailing them. Because I know, especially my generation is a generation who doesn't like to answer the phone or doesn't like to pick up the phone and make a call. We'd rather just email or like DM somebody. But I think with how much money you're spending and how much more valuable picking up the phone and meeting somebody in person and scheduling that one-on-one is so crucial.
Yeah. You know, dedication of time to the client is, you know, what's funny is, like, as, you know, and I'm in the same generation, so it's like you come up and you learn that everything needs to be quick and easy and disconnected a little bit, you know, but the customers expect the complete opposite of that, even though they're in their own personal life, they live it that way,
Used
right?
to that, right? Exactly.
So, but they don't expect that from a business, you know. So it's like, my call to action is always call me, and it's, my phone's on all the time. So whether it's, obviously maybe not 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm not answering that thing, but
fair,
you know. But like,
I don't think anybody would expect that.
if I'm awake, I'm answering it,
right?
So because it's a new opportunity. That's it. It's not about, okay, well, this person's calling me, I'm about to make $500. It's, here's a new person for me to meet, and here's a new opportunity to provide. You know, that's it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Well, I like to try to end on either a piece of advice that you have for couples or vendors. I know we've talked a lot of good points for both sides. I mean, is there anything that you have heard from a mentor or anything in the past that you just like to live by and has really stuck with you through the years? I mean, especially with the story you have of leaving the industry, coming back, having a strong comeback. Like, what would you say to somebody?
The best thing is something that I just had to learn on my own, would be flexible. And that's for vendors and couples alike. Be flexible, because nothing's perfect. And it's never going to go the way you want it to all the time. So be flexible.
Yeah, I love that. I think that we all need to be understanding and flexible in life.
That's right.
So where can everybody find you and Bradley Shaw Photography?
Instagram's the best part, for sure. The best spot to find me. It's at Bradley_Shaw_photography. And I'm always on there. Send me a DM. Doesn't matter.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for traveling all the way from South Carolina to come and hang out with me and Scott today. We really appreciate your time.
I had a blast.
And hopefully we can get you back up here soon if you're ever in this area. It sounds like you're up here pretty often. So.
Pretty often. Yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, anytime I'd be glad to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Scott.